these increases are something that we haven't seen in a number of years and could be somewhat disconcerting. However, higher inflation was widely anticipated this year, and there are numerous factors that are coming into play and causing this. First is the rise in commodity prices. For example, we've seen oil prices increase pretty dramatically on a year-over-year basis. The average price of a barrel of WTI was approximately $17 a barrel in April of 2020, and just a year later, a barrel of WTI is now averaging almost $62 a barrel. We've also seen pretty marked supply chain disruptions, and this is either due to pandemic restrictions such as a factory closing or just simple unexpected events such as the recent fire in a Japanese manufacturer of semiconductors. We've also seen pretty marked shipping price increases, and this is due to bottlenecks in the system. And you add this to the massive government spending and the increase in direct payments to individuals that caused a spike in U.S. personal income. And just simply supply and demand metrics. Supply has not kept up with demand for certain goods, particularly electronics, which we have seen an increase in prices. But I will mention that the most impactful reason is largely due to the timing of the comparisons. So higher inflation was expected this year, basically due to the base effects that are in place. Inflation for April and May of 2020 did plummet to almost 0% as most of the economy was closed and demand was severely curtailed. So year-over-year comparisons in these months will be misleading when trying to find trends in future price increases. During the pandemic, consumers really did shift their spending habits to spend more on goods than on services, and this was due to the limited availability of many services in the system. But we expect, again, as the economy opens in the next coming months, we would expect prices to increase for services as well. In the last 20 years, inflation has been consistently just below the Federal Reserve's target of 2%, and it does appear that the dynamics that have kept inflation so low for decades are still relatively in place. Additionally, markets have been able to absorb these type of shocks to prices in the past. Most recently, if you look at the U.S.-China trade dispute that saw prices increase as a result of higher tariffs, this pretty quickly went through the system. So if we look ahead in the next coming months, the future short-term increases in prices is largely foreseeable. As the economy recovers and starts to get back to what it was pre-pandemic, inflation and prices will increase. But again, we expect this to be a relatively temporary phenomenon. The dynamics that are causing prices to rise should begin to normalize by the end of the year. For example, if we look at the pricing pressures on supply chains, that should largely abate by the end of the year. With regards to the Federal Reserve also believes that the recent spike in prices is temporary. They did mention in their most recent FOMC statement released in late April that inflation, and I quote, has risen, largely reflecting transitory factors.